A man accused of attacking House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband is scheduled to appear in court today, where he faces attempted murder charges that could put him in prison for 13 years to life. San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins announced the charges Monday.
The charges that we are filing today include attempted murder, residential burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, elder abuse, false imprisonment of an elder, as well as threats to a public official and their family.
David DePape also faces federal charges, including attempted kidnapping. A chilling federal complaint said he told police he wanted to hold the Democratic leader hostage and break her kneecaps to show other members of Congress there were consequences to actions. He carried zip ties and tape in a backpack with 2 hammers and demanded to talk to Nancy when he invaded her San Francisco home Friday night. She was not there. He attacked her husband. The federal and state criminal charges stand in contrast to mocking jokes and conspiracy theories about the attack by far-right figures and even some leading Republicans. Jenkins called the attack a deliberate political act.
It's very sad to see that we are once again at a point in history where people believe that it's okay to express their political sentiments through violence. And so I think it really demonstrates that we have to calm things down. We have to decide that we are going to be more respectful as an American society.
DePape is a Canadian citizen who is known by some to embrace a range of right-wing conspiracy theories. There's been more than 10,000 threats against members of Congress in the last year, thousands more than just a year ago. Mary Sherman has more.
President Joe Biden cautioned the attack is the latest consequence of the Republican Party's extreme fringe.
It's one thing to condemn the violence, but you can't condemn the violence unless you condemn those people who continue to argue the election was not real, that it's being stolen.
Some members of Congress are calling for increased security, and the Capitol Police are reviewing the break-in. I'm Mary Sherman for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
President Joe Biden accused oil companies of war profiteering as he raised the possibility of imposing a windfall tax on energy companies if they don't boost domestic production Monday. Max Pringle has more.
Biden said oil companies are taking advantage of the Russian war on Ukraine to make record profits.
The profits are a windfall of war. The windfall from the brutal conflict that's ravaging Ukraine and hurting tens of millions of people around the globe.
Biden said a windfall profits tax could be coming soon, along with other restrictions if companies don't increase production and refining capacity. Biden pointed out that earnings reports show big oil companies were in some cases making triple the amount of profit they made in the same quarter last year. Biden said now is the time to streamline the process of getting renewable energy sources up and running. He called on Congress to act immediately when it returns from recess. I'm Max Pringle.
Oil giant BP said today its earnings on the third quarter more than doubled. Profits jumped to more than $8 billion, up from $3.3 billion in the same period last year. Soaring earnings at British energy companies are fueling calls for the government to expand a tax on their windfall profits as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak struggles to close an estimated $46 billion hole in the UK's government. Experts from the United Nations Power Agency are conducting inspections at 2 sites in Ukraine where Russia alleges dirty bombs are being manufactured. International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi said the inspection requested by Kiev would soon be complete. Western nations have rejected Russia's claim as transparently false and even a ruse for its own false flag attack against Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities allege it's Moscow that's intended to detonate such a device. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people in Ukraine face power blackouts and water shortages from Russian shelling. Meanwhile, Ukraine says a dozen ships left the Black Sea port to deliver some 3 tons of grain to nations in need of food supply in Africa and the Middle East. It comes after Russia said it would halt its participation in the deal, allowing grain shipments from Ukraine. The Supreme Court in the U.S. could be on the verge of banning affirmative action in higher education. The court heard a pair of cases aimed at overturning policies that consider race in admissions at the University of North Carolina and Harvard. Christopher Martinez has more.
Cameron Norris is a lawyer for the plaintiffs in the case of Students for Fair Admission versus the president and trustees of Harvard.
What Harvard is doing to Asians, like what it was doing to Jews in the 1920s, is shameful, but it's a predictable result of letting universities use race in highly subjective processes.
That case, along with the case Students for Fair Admission versus the University of North Carolina, challenges the use of race as a factor in admissions to college or university, seeking to overturn a 2003 Supreme Court precedent called Grutter versus Bollinger. University affirmative action programs are aimed at increasing diversity by helping students historically underrepresented in higher education, a practice that has benefited African American and Latino students. But some critics say that practice hurts white and Asian American students. The two lawsuits were filed by Students for Fair Admission, a group that has filed dozens of lawsuits against affirmative action since the early 1990s. I'm Christopher Martinez.
Israelis are voting in the fifth national election since 2019 today. Former President Benjamin Netanyahu is vying for the seat once again amidst corruption charges. His main rival is the man who helped oust him last year, centrist Prime Minister Yair Lapid. I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.